For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Next year, this time, it will be the 50th anniversary of the death of Chief Luthuli. His name came up recently in the ANC campaign for the elections. Does he hold lessons for us today?
Yes, you know, his name was mentioned, and I think usually people just mention a name or refer to the person as an icon. And what I think is important for us is that we have to learn what is the meaning, what are the meanings of the lives of Mandela, Luthuli, Sisulu, Tambo, and so forth. And I think Luthuli has suffered quite serious neglect. He's the first person on the African continent to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and he, I've done quite a lot of interviews and I've studied him quite carefully, and I believe that there are important lessons for us in the violent society that we are in today. Luthuli believed in peace, but he also recognized that under the apartheid regime, at a certain point, peaceful protest was made impossible, you know, on a sustained basis, with the ANC banned, with Sharpeville and a number of these things. And although he was reluctant, he did accept the formation of MK. Now, but the importance of Luthuli's message is not whether he accepted or didn't accept the formation of MK, which is a bit controversial. The importance for me is that insofar as he accepted the use of force, for example, he said, if someone comes to steal my chickens, I will resist them by not just by persuasion. But he understood what his message meant was that if violence or use of force was ever justified, it was only justified so long as the danger existed. And once the danger was past, it was very important to build peace. And we have to understand in South Africa today that from 1990, we were supposed to build peace. And the principle of non-violence has never been adequately valued in South Africa today. Now, Luthuli valued it very much because he didn't want South Africa to descend into what he called a racial war. And what I think we need to learn today is that we have a number of people using violent rhetoric. Well, you have government people using language like shoot to kill, bring me my machine gun, and a whole lot of, we've had the Marikana massacre, we've had a lot of acts of violence in South Africa, but you've also got young people saying, give us back the land, or else we'll use force, and they misuse the writing of Frantz Fanon. Now, what I learned from that is that the basis for Luthuli wanting peace was also connected to the need for equal rights between all citizens. So long as some were being oppressed by others, the potentiality for violence was there. And I think we should look at, about a week ago, the Constitutional Court declared one of the government's acts regarding land restitution to be unlawful. And we can see how they've stalled, how very few people have had remedies in regard to land. So that when you have this festering anger, this festering resentment, the sense that nothing has changed in terms of access to land and other things, you have a danger of an outbreak of violence. And we need to remedy that and remove the danger. And I think that is one of the lessons from Luthuli, is to unpack what it was about. He wasn't a pacifist, but insofar as he did accept the resort to arms, it was in self-defense as a very limited exception to the principle of non-violence.
So what can we learn from Luthuli's qualities as a leader?
You know, there are a lot of things that we can draw on. His gender qualities, his ethical qualities, his integrity. But let me restrict myself to his ethical qualities and his integrity. And what is useful about Luthuli is that when you read what he writes in his autobiography, Let My People Go, and I've also done interviews with members of the family, you can see that he was quite introspective. He thought a lot about, he agonized about decisions. Now, when he was a teacher at Adams College, the people of his village kept on sending him messages asking him to come back and make himself available to be elected. It's an elected chief he was, to be an elected chief. And he didn't want to do it because he thought teaching was his vocation, and also he needed to support a family, and he said he earned relatively well at Adams. His wife, by the way, Nokukanya Mabengu, speaks about what he earned as a peasant. But anyway, he would earn less as a chief. But then one day he changed his mind. And the reasons he gives for changing his mind are quite important, because I think it's important for us to understand that people are not naturally good or naturally bad. Sometimes they do good things, sometimes they do bad things. And I think what is important is to understand the reasoning. And Luthuli looks at his own Christianity and he says, what I learned from Adams College was that my Christianity was not a private affair, that I had to be concerned about other fellow human beings and their welfare. And that is why he responds to what he calls the call of the village. The word call, by the way, is used in theology to refer to being a prophet. So he was reading the signs of the time also in referring to the call of the village. What was needed in that time was that he should do this. When Luthuli became a chief, he was one of the few chiefs who had criminal jurisdiction. Most chiefs can only decide divorce matters and things like that. Now, when you have criminal jurisdiction, a lot of the chiefs used to augment their income by imposing fines. Luthuli never imposed fines. Some people would also ask him, in dealing with a boundary dispute, they would offer him some bribe, and he never accepted these bribes. So what is interesting about that is that, first of all, Luthuli thought about what was ethically required of him in deciding whether to remain a teacher or to be a chief. When he became a chief, he may not have had access to tenders, but he did have the opportunity to enrich himself. And he consciously chose not to impose fines because he thought the community was very poor and they couldn't afford fines. It was best to solve a problem without a fine. He also was not prepared to accept bribes. Now, the same consciousness of ethical decisions and reflection you can see in other things. You know, Nelson Mandela says, you mustn't say, I'm willing to die. unless you've thought about what it means and prepared yourself for that. Because when the time comes, you may not be willing to die. Now, in Luthuli's case, when he became president of the ANC in Natal, as it then was, the Defiance campaign was coming. And he didn't know about this because the previous president had not told the rest of the executive. So he got to Bloemfontein and he hears about the Defiance campaign. And he's shocked. So he says to the delegates, "Can Natal come in later?" And some woman shouts, "Coward." And Luthuli understood that if you do something which involves people going to jail and all of that, they must be prepared. So he went back and they had a meeting in Durban, the executive, and he said to them, "If we are going to call on others to defy, are we willing ourselves to pay the price?" So they all said they were willing, and they did an oath. The oath, by the way, was not something that the ANC had done. I think you can trace it back to Gandhi. Oaths were very big. Gandhi, when the Natal Indian Congress was formed, and here in 1902, when they had a burning of certificates that Indians were given in Newtown, they did an oath as well. So they did this oath, and they prayed, and they dispersed. So what I think we can learn from Luthuli is that you have to be self-conscious about your leadership, and if you decide that you're going to take an ethically difficult course, or an ethical course which is difficult, you must prepare yourself for it. Not suddenly find, "Oh God, I'm in jail, where's my mommy?" or something like this. When you're in jail, you must be there having expected to be in jail. And that is one of the lessons that I would draw. But I think we really need next year to popularize Luthuli more than he has been.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about remembering Chief Luthuli today.